Britto, 2020 is in full swing and our first Wellness Base Camp for the year is not far away.
That's right, MP. Geelong hosts the Wellness Base Camp on Saturday, March 28th.
Our Base Camp theme for 2020 is Release Your Overwhelm and Find Your Clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kim Morrison is going to help you get clear on self-love.
Brett Hill will help you release limiting beliefs and develop a growth mindset.
And the great man Marcus Pearce will help you find clarity on your life purpose and relationships.
Expect a surprise or two. This is Saturday, March 28 at the Geelong Library and Heritage Centre.
Tell your friends, bring your family and colleagues, and make sure you go to thewellnessbasecamp.com to get your 2-for-1 early bird tickets now.
That's Saturday, March 28 in Geelong. Tickets at thewellnessbasecamp.com.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is Parenting Kids with Additional Needs. I don't know where to go with that because it's part of my story with my third that's come to light in the last week. But before we dive into that, now Bridget and I haven't had this conversation either because we haven't seen each other. Life, kids going back to school, it was all very inconvenient timing really, wasn't it?
So this feels like the beginning of what might be a bit of a vulnerable one, I think, for you too.
Yeah, look, possibly. Yeah, possibly. I do feel like I've processed a heck ton. I really kind of went into a cave, which is why our podcast is late this week, because I had got to the point where I would message you and I'm like, I just can't. And then I message, no, I can make myself. No, I really can't. You know, it's like playing devil's advocate with myself.
Yeah.
And because I take our commitment to this podcast really seriously and largely, bar probably one or two in the whole 5 years, we have always had a podcast released on a Tuesday. Yeah. So this was Monday night and I was just so shattered. I could hardly put one foot in front of the other. And I was like, but you can't let everyone down. I'm like, but I really just have to rest, you know. And in the end, and in the end I just said to you, I can't even give myself permission that I know I need to give myself. And I really know that I need to do this. And you were like, yeah, of course, we'll just do it Wednesday. But what I love about that also is just that's the fluidity and the integrity to which we bring to this business is that we are humans who honour the evolution of our journey, who know exactly what's required of us in motherhood. And because it's a top value for both of us, sometimes / relatively often, it's a higher value and gets more airtime than work.
Yeah, it's true.
So
But there's still edges that we both wrestle with.
there's
right?
still edges we both wrestle with that, and there is definitely there's a difference between I need to give over to motherhood in this moment as opposed to it's the place where I don't have to face work. That's a
Yeah.
very different using it to hide versus I really need to be here right now.
Yeah, yeah.
But because you and I enter that with a deep reverence for what we know that job is required, and because you and I both have absolute respect for the fact that we are bigger and brighter and bolder in this world when we honour that and we show up in those ways, and that we never want a business or a space that doesn't allow us
To
do that because we set this up with that. We want to be the people, the women who do both. We want to be the women and forge and find the way where we can have everything that we want to have, which is children at our feet and a business that lights our hearts on fire.
Yeah, yeah, and that really supports that and flows with that. It's not an either or scenario.
Right. And this is a conversation I think is often not had, but this is what happens behind the scenes with you and I. We'll have, I really can't today. And I'm like, yeah, cool, that's fine. I'll do these bits or we'll catch up at this date. And it just shifts and it moves and it ebbs and it flows in a way that corporate just never could.
No.
Right. So that's why this podcast is late, just as the forerunner to this. But I really appreciate everybody's patience and willingness with us to look for a life that looks like that.
Because we love the feeling that we get through this space being permission for others to do that too. Like that's a really beautiful kind of symbiotic flow of permission giving that we ourselves give each other, and therefore we in turn give you as listeners to look for the way that it can work for you, that lights you up, that is beyond the confines of what perhaps life has to look like for you in motherhood. It's not this either or. It can be a way to forge a path that is so profoundly you, you know, as you evolve as a mother and a woman. Because I often think of the absurdity of, you know, going back to this kind of corporate role in your cubicle. Here's your work again. Like you're the same person who left, you know, 6-12 months ago, because you're not.
Yeah.
And
Or it doesn't matter whatever the fuck else is going on with every other top value in your life. Whereas that's not how you and I see it.
that's right.
We see one as completely feeding and purposeful of the other.
Yeah.
And so it may be that I spend the 4 hours I was going to spend on work today in motherhood, but I bet you that leads me to the path of inspiration and the pinpoint moment where I can do what I was going to do in 4 hours in half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just a completely different productivity shift.
Because when it's in alignment with what you feel lit up by, it's like the drop-ins come faster. Work doesn't have to be a heavy push. It's not like you have to like will your creativity to come online, because when you're in that space of flow with what lights you up, then it can come through. It's not. It's a different realm, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. But some weeks look like this, where really I don't get very much done that looks like work, and I spend a heck of a lot of time in the work of motherhood. Like, and some weeks just look like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that next week won't be. But this week, that's what it's been. So
tell us about what that's looked like.
Well, first off, I'm just going to ask everyone to jump on and join our tribe, because we say every time, we are going to send you an email. So jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au and scroll on down to the red banner and sign up to our tribe. Sure.
Sign up to join our newsletter.
Yeah, it's just our community newsletter. Yeah. So we let you know what we've put out in the world with links so that you can keep up to date, so you don't miss anything, that you have opportunities to jump in and out of whatever you want to jump in and out of and dive a little deeper on. It just really keeps a finger on the pulse of the conscious parenting that is Nourishing the Mother. So please jump on nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up.
Yeah.
Okay. So parenting a child with additional needs. So you all know, well, certainly if you are a long-time podcast listener, you know that my third child is always the one that I have had and struggled with in the most immense and intense ways across all levels of parenting all of the time. She's just, in inverted commas, always my hard one. And we've gone through various phases I've gone through various phases of seeking help, because she is just a little bit off center. There's just stuff about her that's just NQR. And I say that I say that with love, but I say that in the point of I know what normal development looks like. I know it because of the amount of children I've worked with, but I know it because I've raised 3 others.
Yeah.
So I've always known she just sits a bit outside of it. But she's never had 2 feet in anybody's camp in terms of any professional we've taken her to.
Yeah.
In terms of a diagnosis. They're like, yeah, but she's a bit of this and a bit of this and a bit of that, and so therefore she's just Lola.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've always gone like, fuck, yeah, she's just Lola. And so I found all of the ways that we can to work with her, like all of them. Aware parenting from the very beginning, meeting so many consistent everyday needs all of the time, showing up, turning myself inside out. Like really, she's the kid that I do all of that with. Then there's all the physical therapies that we go through, and we've done them all. We've done and do them all. Occupational therapy, pediatric physiotherapy, barefoot podiatry, chiropractic, kinesiology, naturopathy, homeopathy, like you name it. We've fucking done the lot.
Yeah.
And as you know, last year I said to myself, right, this year
this is her year.
This is her year. And hence, you know, went through an enormous process with her last year to get to the point of seeing a number of specialists who went, no, she has sleep apnea. So that explains why she's developmentally delayed, having trouble at school, you know, blah, blah, blah. Why she's more emotional because she's not sleeping. And it's severe to moderate sleep apnea. But because she has this low tone thing, we couldn't put her through the private system, which means we had to be in the public system, which has been a thing on its own. And she's booked in like next week to have her tonsils and adenoids out, which is great. I'm really have got to the point where she needs that. I don't know. I can't remember if I've spoken on this podcast or not. In the process of all of that, I then started looking at my other daughter, my older one, and going, there's a lot of similarities there. And went through the private system with her for tonsils and adenoids, and I kid you not,
which has just been profound, hasn't it?
I can't tell you. That's what I was about to say. I don't even know if I've said that on this podcast. It has been fucking unbelievable to the point where I literally am like, what the actual? Like, how has this even happened? Like, you know, me as the naturopath, the body is completely purposeful and is designed as it is. And, you know, it's because of this diet and then that diet and the years that I have spent having her gluten-free and dairy-free and continuously working on parasites and iron supplementation because she had all these dark circles under her eyes and blah, blah, blah. Like so much, always tired, you know. And always kind of just an average learner, just really average. Maths kind of didn't make a lot of sense. Spelling's always been horrific. Like she was in grade 6 last year and she was still probably grade 3 or 4 level spelling, but a prolific reader. So no one could ever correlate the two.
Yeah, because often, you know, you're often a great speller by virtue of being a great reader.
Right. So no one could work that out. Anyway, so Jade was just Jade, kind of like Lola's just Lola, right? You need a bullshit mum if you're going to get anywhere in this world, I've decided, because the system doesn't help you.
Yeah.
No, really.
Yeah, I believe that. I absolutely believe that.
You have to be willing to be your child's advocate.
Compartmentalized. It's so like the specialists are so narrowly focused on their area that they're not like talking to the other areas to know necessarily what's.
There's so much, and it's such a big organism.
The body.
No, the system. Yeah, and they only see a slice of your child. They don't see the whole.
Well, yeah, and they're only seeing how your child appears in a 30-minute or 1-hour appointment, right? Like, and they're trying to judge them on that. Like,
Anyway, so my daughter, my 12-year-old, had her tonsils and adenoids out, and at the 6-week mark, it was like bang. It was like all of a sudden her body took this enormous breath of oxygen in, and it's like it just swelled, and all of a sudden she just bloomed in front of my eyes.
It's so amazing.
Like all of a sudden breast development, all of a sudden just language, energy, can do moves at sport that she wasn't previously able to do, and not because anything else had changed. It happened to coincide with the PAT testing that they do at school, and that was simply just to end off the end of year report. I kid you not, from the start of that 6 weeks to the end of that 6 weeks with nothing else, she had gone up 4 levels in maths.
God.
And had gone from grade 3 to 4 spelling all the way up to year 7 spelling.
Wow. That's amazing.
Nothing else changed. Turns out she just didn't have enough oxygen in her brain. Dark circles disappeared from under her eyes, like the stuff that I've been treating her for her entire life.
Yeah.
Disappeared. No more tummy issues. She says to me, Mum, I don't even wake up at night anymore.
God.
You know, just like how much do we take for granted actually the basic human need for deep rest and restoration?
Yeah, and, you know, good breathing, right?
Yeah.
Like, of course our brain needs air to function well, but it makes sense that if there's all of those obstructions to that happening, it's going to impact on every level.
Yeah. So here we are, right? And I look at my husband and I'm like, oh, man, you should have had your tonsils out when you were a kid. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, there's a genetic element there for her large tonsils. Anyway, so I've watched my 12-year-old absolutely bloom after this operation to the point where I'm like, holy shit, there's this whole slice of life that I, like, judged the mega shit out of that I'm completely humbled to. It really does have a place.
Yeah.
So Lola's booked in for a surgery, which is great. So in the meantime, so I was like working through one thing at a time because or else I find it's too overwhelming, all of the things that she needs. So I was just going one at a time. So my next one was the ped. And so I'd been on the wait list for a particular ped because there's a couple of mums at school that have kids with high needs and they're just an absolute wealth of information. And so I just downloaded what they had essentially, and then I'm pattern repeating. So I'm going to see that specialist and, you know, they know the system and NDIS inside out. So I went to this ped and I was very foolish because I just thought, I'll just go to this appointment and, you know, she's just going to like refer me for some tests or something, and didn't realise it was going to be like an hour and a half long process, and I took my 2-year-old with me. Yeah.
Just jumping into our podcast on parenting with additional needs to talk about Liberate, which is coming up in Soul-Driven Motherhood. And it is really all about how do we create more spaciousness in our homes to be with more of what our life is asking of us and be with more of what our joy is. And certainly parenting with spaciousness when it's intense is helped a lot by our space and what we can do with it to make it work better for us. So come join us in Soul-Driven Motherhood for Liberate.
Yeah, it was pretty shit.
That sounds like that would have been. You wouldn't have been getting the maximum value from that appointment.
No, it was really hard, actually. It was really hard. And I couldn't fully be present to Lola. And I didn't realise the wave of emotion that was going to come up just telling her story from the beginning.
And even like Lola being there and you not being able to help Lola through that, like through her hearing her own story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being talked about.
Because then there's this crazy-ass toddler in the middle of it all.
Yeah. That's really hard.
It was really hard. I will never do that again. So if you're going to a specialist, please do not take your little people, because I made that decision. It was not the right one to make. Anyway, so we were with this ped for about an hour and a half, of most of which I couldn't stop crying. And because it's such a big story. And I didn't realise, I don't think, how much I was holding on. Just in a way, it's a lot of that you just grit your teeth and you just keep going because it's just another day. And all of this shit that I looked at her every day and went, that's odd. That's weird. That's not right. She automatically went, no, that's not. That's odd. That's weird. She's very different. No, it was like the biggest relief. I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
That's what the tears were. It was like someone just unplugged a stopper.
But somebody heard you, like you felt heard.
For the first time.
Wow.
In like 5.5 years of me going, it's just, okay, she's Lola. Yeah, I love her as she is, and doing all of the work to be there for that. And then, no, it's really not right. And then everyone going, no, she doesn't fit our box. And here we go again. And even I'd said to my husband, like last year or the year before, her hands are even odd. Her hands are weird. And he was like, I think they're fine. And then I'd say to her mum at school, who's a teacher, yeah, but she does this and it's really weird. And she's like, she does lots of great stuff too. Like, don't you see that? And I was like, fuck. Like, I was starting to do a mental trip on myself.
of going, am I only seeing this?
Right.
Like, you know,
I'm only seeing the shittest parts of her. Like, Julie, you've got to like come out of this because all I can see is all the things that don't work. And all of a sudden I had this person, she was doing this full body kind of, you know, assessment of her, and she's like, oh, no, hand's unusual. I didn't even say anything.
wow.
And I was like, yes, they are. Yes, they are. They are.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, you know, like I was
And
like.
how was Lola going through all of this? Like, how
she
was
was just really quiet, really quiet. What was hard was that I couldn't be right next to her because I had this toddler who was continuously losing her fucking shit.
Oh, God. Oh, I wish I could have just like taken Gwen out of there for you.
Yeah, me too. I didn't know in my head.
SOS.
Yeah, I didn't know in my head it was going to be that.
Yeah.
So it was actually just the biggest relief because for the first time I went, holy shit, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not crazy. I feel like that person who's been in the asylum for 5 years and some person walks in like a breath of fresh air and says, you're not crazy.
Yeah, I see it too. I see what you see.
I see what you see. Like, it was like, I can't tell you the relief. Anyway, so at the end of that consultation, she's kind of sent us off with like a shit ton of tests. So essentially we've just got to go through this massive like potentially 12, 18-month assessment process because she's got to go through genetic testing and all sorts of stuff. So we're on the train ride for it. So every day I'm like, I'm going to focus on the one thing and try and get the one next step because it's so big and overwhelming. And then you've got to look at, can you get funding through NDIS and all sorts of stuff. But I've got to even get in with the specialist to get assessments, which is proving to be even that is excessively difficult and all of the wait lists. And anyway, so it's a massive process. But what happened was I came home from that and I was totally shattered. And I just took a breath and pretty much parented from my bed for the rest of the day, you know, in between everyone, but just took the time to observe in a way that I hadn't observed how much I do every day. Like for the first time of someone going, no, she's definitely different. And all of a sudden it was like I could just take a step back and be the surveyor of what I do every day.
To help her.
There is not a single thing that she does in any part of her day that she doesn't first ask me to help her with. Nothing. You think about all of the shit your kids do every day that my 2-year-old will get up and do because she wants to get herself dressed, get her own shoes, get her own blah, blah, blah. Every single step.
That must have been the biggest highlight for you too, seeing that Gwen, who's, 3-4 years younger, is doing the things that Lola's having trouble doing.
Lola can't do it. Won't. I don't know which it is yet because I don't know what the assessment is, which is essentially what I'm after is what's a reasonable expectation and what's not. Because this was it's all kind of been cataclysmic, I suppose, because over Christmas we were supposed to go camping because of the bushfires. We didn't, it got cancelled. And it was the first time my husband spent a solid 3 weeks at home with the kids, which is completely different to 3 weeks away camping where everyone's kind of divide and conquer and busy and no one has to do anything if they don't want to. It's very different living in your home environment for 3 weeks. And he started to get super shitty with her and he's like, you can do that, you can do that, you can do that, to the point where it was like this major thing that was happening in our 3 weeks off. And I was like, holy shit. Can she? Because I would normally just do that. Like, I hadn't realised how much I hold and do every single day for her, because if she can't do it, it's a meltdown. Every step of every single fraction of every single day, one after the other, after the other, after the other, without a break.
So it becomes easier then for you to do a lot of it for her.
Well, it's just by virtue of it just is, because she can't. And if she can't do it, everything I have to choose, am I going to stay for the amount of tears? Do we have time for it? Because it wouldn't even matter if it was this moment or not, because it's continuous.
Yeah,
Lola will have on and off tantrums all day, every day, which I choose to continuously meet because I have a high value on
expression.
Yeah, and conscious parenting and aware. And she's been aware parented since the beginning. But it was me taking that step back and observing was like, holy fucking shit, look at how much you do in a day. Like how much nobody sees. how much I don't even recognize what I do in a day.
Autopilot.
Because it's my normal.
Yeah.
And because I have to do it. Because that's just the way that it is. And it was just this moment of, I'm tired, this, this unclogging of everything I hold, kind of hold more and hold more and hold more every day with her, because it is so hard. And every day I was thinking, I'm not enough because I can't hold all of this and I can't do all of this. And I was going, I'm not parenting well enough here. I've missed something. Like even independent play where I was like, fuck, I've aware parented from the beginning. Did I not? And I would track back and back and back. Continue. What didn't I do? What did I miss? What didn't I do? And then I look at my 3 other children who all make those milestones effortlessly. It's not an issue. It's not even something I have to think about with them. So it was like I'd spent all of this time guilt tripping on the ways I hadn't done the things because she was the product of me.
Yeah.
When in the end, she's actually just really different.
Yeah. That's really massive. It's massive in the sense of you being able to hear and feel heard, and seen, but then it's two, isn't it? It's now you're able to release like the floodgates in terms of like, oh my God, like I wasn't going crazy.
Yeah.
But also
because I really thought I was going crazy. Like I really started to think I'm like a body obsessed person. Like I'm focusing on this every day, and finding all of the things. Was
it helpful, when your husband was home and you could both like assess it? Like were you checking in with him on like, do you notice this and do you notice this? And like, did he start to take more of your viewpoint because he would be post the 3 weeks that he was home?
Post the 3 weeks. Yeah. I mean, I guess the viewpoint he was taking, like he's still, I think it's been a shock in a way for him to consider that there's something in inverted commas wrong with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she just is Lola. And this is the thing, right? Like this is where I think the way that we've chosen to parent, how much has that influenced her ability to be out of the box? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, so everyone's going, but yeah, I see the thing. But she's so great and she's fine here. And she goes, I'm like, yeah, but that's a lot of fucking hard work every single day that I put in to make sure she can do those things.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't chosen to parent the way that I parent, bet you she would have been put in a box 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But I choose to parent in a way that allows her to have the skills and seek the professionals that have helped us just enough that she's normal.
By. Yeah.
She's normal enough that she's not on anyone's radar.
Yeah.
Except mine.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I do it every day and nobody else does.
Which, is it like a blessing and a curse? Like it can be a blessing for potentially, but also had you noticed earlier not parented the way you did, you might have been able to access
help earlier. Yeah. Yeah.
That it wasn't all about you having to do all the things.
No, 100%. But then I also think what a gift this is, that whatever, I don't know what this is yet. No one does. But what she's got through the process of being parented has got her to the point where whatever she's had hasn't held her back, really. I mean, everything is hard, but hasn't held her back from anything that other kids would notice necessarily is outside of normal. Like she can still communicate. She's got fantastic emotional intelligence. She can show up and try different things with her body simply because we're continuously meeting her needs and offering connection and offering moments of play and outlet, and it doesn't stack up and become something that's torturous for her, I don't think. So I was more sitting with, one, fuck, how much worse would it be if I hadn't chosen to parent the way that I have?
Yeah.
And two, what I do is immense every day. And it is different for a child who has additional needs. Like I want to say it's not that they're all just kids and parenting in inverted commas normal kids is super duper hard. Yeah, I agree with that. Until you have, it's like parenting one kid is hard until you have two. And parenting 2 is hard until you have 3.
Parenting 3 is hard.
And it's relative, right?
Yeah.
And then the person who has 4 kids goes, you're having trouble with 1, what's wrong with you? Right? Like it's relative.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with kids. Like what we do will fill our time regardless of, you know, like the values thing. What's that saying? You know, that what we do expands to the time that we give it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the task expands to fit the time we've got to do it. Like
right.
Yeah.
So that is the same thing, I think, with parenting, but it is significantly harder parenting a child who cannot comprehend or show up to the world in the way that is developmentally normal. It is definitely harder. At least that's my experience. Now that I can take a breath back and go, there's other stuff going on here, as opposed to I'm just not parenting right. There's more. And she is harder, and I've said this to you before, even before this, she is harder for me than all 3 of my other kids put together. But there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because she genuinely is. Because she genuinely requires so much more.
Assistance. And
so much more, and cannot cope emotionally or mentally with half the stuff that the other kids can. So everything is hard, and she can't move. I mean, that's kind of her major problem, is her body is low tone and not very functional. So everything is hard every day, and there is no reprieve. So I wanted to get on here just to have a rant, because I've really allowed myself, I suppose, to take a breath and go, sometimes it's bigger than what we do.
Yeah.
And that it is genuinely really, parenting is really hard however you choose it. I agree with that, depending on the amount of attention, sure, but intention that you bring to it. But having additional needs does require you to be on stretch in ways that you simply don't have to for a child that can just do shit on their own.
And, you know, also in terms of their capacity emotionally too, to deal with and integrate what you're asking, that, you know, you're having to hold so much more, so you're therefore having to stretch your own psychological capacity to meet that, which is enormous.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
It's enormous.
Yeah, it's really big. And then there's all the physical stuff. So, and then you start putting them out in the world, and it's all of the social stuff and all of the ways they don't meet that, or it's school and all of the ways that they don't understand the classroom or the content.
School's been a big
it's been hard for her this last year.
And that's been a big shift for you in terms of your perceptions of school as well, hasn't it? Because your other 2 kind of coasted through school.
Yeah, school's always met their needs because they're normal, in inverted commas. It's not meeting the needs of this child that has additional needs.
And therefore your capacity to like get to school and your transitions in the day and all of that becomes much harder, because
everything
it's not, you know, it's not an optimum environment for her right now.
No. So she holds more. So when she gets home, she's shittier. Yep. Everything's harder. Yep. All of the above. Like, it's just a lot. And it just really made me just have reverence, I think, for myself just for a moment, to go, this job that we do every day that is completely unacknowledged by the rest of the world is really fucking massive. It's really big.
It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, my absolute hope would be that we find some sort of answers, even if there's not one answer, but some sort of answers for Lola that allows us the next step to work out what support people and structures we can put around her so that things just get a little bit easier.
We are going to wrap up this first part of our discussion with Julie on parenting a child with additional needs. It's big stuff, and this is just part 1 of the conversation and the learnings that Julie's had so far on this journey.
Yes, so we'll be back next week with part 2, and to connect with you, Bridget,
is suburbansandcastles.com, and you, Jules,
is thepleasurenutritionist.com.
Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey. And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.